Welcome back, Truth Seeker. It is September 11th, 2021. 20 years ago, I wondered what the world would look like after 9/11. And it wasn't for the same reasons most people are wondering. To me, it was where are we going as a society if this is what our government is? This is what our news media is. This is how they lie to us, and we as people cannot see through it. What will this same government and news media mafia, what will they have us looking like 20 years from now? And we know what that looks like. Wearing muzzles and giving up sovereignty over our bodies, and now being called names if we value freedom more than Pfizer's safety shot. And again, I just want to go back and let you know how it was as someone who was just barely 18 years old. That's how old I was on 9/11, born July 21st, 1983. But I want to let you know, just how obvious the lie was and what stood out to me then and what we know today. And I'm just going to put me on the camera. I don't normally do that, but I'm just going to put me on the camera so you can read my shirt. Shout out to Dana, who's in the New York area. A critical thought is not a conspiracy theory. And, you know, I had critical thoughts after 9/11. One of them was, what are the odds of a national emergency on 911? Something seems wrong about this. Another one was, man, why are those explosions so huge going out of the building? And why are they coming down both towers in a perfect demolition, especially when one, the corner blew out, and you would think if, like, the steel got weak, the top of the building would tilt and the top of the building would crumble off. But they both came down the same way in perfect demolition fashion. And then, you know, you learned about Building 7, which didn't really get that much news coverage, but the building that fell 8 hours later in the day, right next to Buildings 1 and 2. And the news media said it was a lucky break for Enron, the biggest supporter of the Bush administration, and WorldCom, because they both had federal charges going against them. In their cases, the documents were being housed in Building 7 of all buildings in the world. You know, a lucky break for the two biggest lawsuits in the history at that time against private companies. We know it's all big fascism. But again, you guys, just simple things to share with your friends and family that should engage their mind just a little bit. Just keep things simple, you know? And by the way, for all the people that just keep promoting Judy Wood's work each year, you know, Judy Wood's work is great, but she doesn't name any names. She doesn't show you who's responsible, who needs to be held accountable, and it's not just the puppet politicians who are in office. You know, Judy Wood's work is good for getting people thinking, but again, there's more surface level stuff that can be easily understood unless somebody's mind is totally switched off. And again, point out to people that the Pentagon, construction began on the Pentagon on September 11th, 1941. That's a historical fact. And, you know, I'll talk more about Flight 70. Well, I guess I might as well just do it now. I mean, maybe Flight 77 might be too much for somebody, but these are all facts you can look up as well. Just remember, after 9/11 happened, they called it the new Pearl Harbor. And Pentagon construction began September 11th, 41, just before Pearl Harbor. But look into Flight 77 that supposedly hit the Pentagon, where there was never any proof that there was any plane parts there, you know, for the aircraft that supposedly hit the building. But the thing is, they say Flight 77 took off at 8:20 and crashed at 9:37. That's 77 minutes later. Look at the coordinates of Washington, D.C. It's the 77th meridian west. And if you look into the history of when they assign coordinates in this world, the U.S. lobbied for that 77 position. Tell you why in a moment. But the Pentagon, it is 77 feet tall as well. And then when you learn the language of Gematria, the simple practice of coining numbers into words, and you don't even need to share this part with people, because this might be too much for them too, but when you write out September 11th, it equals 77. When you write it out as words, spell it out. When you write out World Trade Center, it's 77. When you write out United States, it's 77. Massive propaganda for a nation, in a nation. A ritual, clearly. And again, in D.C., you don't have to look far for the number rituals. You have a 555-foot tall Washington Monument that sits across from a 5-sided War Department that's 5 floors above ground with a 5-acre court in the middle. That shows that there's something to numbers. The Masons are there. Washington, D.C., the House of the Temple, their headquarters. 33 pillars on the outside that are each 33 feet tall. You could also say 33 columns, each 33 feet tall. And of course in Gematria, masonry, secrecy, order, federal, they're all 33. The phrase false flags, 33. Remember, 9/11, the plan went into motion in 1968, 33 years before 2001. 1968 is when World Trade Center construction began. In 1968, World Trade Center construction began. 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones like his father, who was the Republican president before him. And again, even the world of sports. Again, 9/11, Patriot Act, Patriots. The year that the World Trade Center construction began was the season that the New York Jets won their only Super Bowl. And remember, Tom Brady with the Patriots, his whole career began in a game against the Jets. Drew Bledsoe got hit by Mo Lewis, got taken out of the game, and then in came Drew Brady. Did I call him Drew Brady? Tom Brady. And the rest was history. What's interesting about Drew Brees is he's from Washington State, played for the Washington State Cougars. Just like the construction firm for the World Trade Centers is from Seattle, Washington. Magnuson Klemenkic Associates. We'll talk about why that is. But Drew Bledsoe wore the number 11, September 11th, the 11th of the month, the big buildings in New York, the 11th state that looked like a massive 11, the first plane, supposedly Flight AA-11. And again, like I've always pointed out, how deep are the lies on 9/11? Were there even really planes that hit the buildings or the Pentagon? Could they have been missiles? After all, we simulated on June 1st, 2001, the federal government did, look it up, it was called Project Amalgam Virgo. June 1st, 2001, they simulated an attack against the United States where cruise missiles hit strategic targets, and the cover document for that federal exercise is Osama bin Laden's face, the leader of Al-Qaeda, which in Gematria equals 102. That simulation was 102 days before 9/11, and they said the 9/11 attack lasted 102 minutes. Can you learn Gematria? You really start to connect dots. It's like, wow, even Al-Qaeda equals 102. And of course, Osama died in 2011, right? So, there's just the number thing, though. But you know what? Just here, if I'm writing stuff up on the whiteboard right now, let's erase it all off. Maybe that's not even the right starting point. There's just so many ways to start waking people up with 9/11. You can point out to them that they called the attack the New Pearl Harbor. There's so many headlines preserved, books written about it, referring to 9/11 as the New Pearl Harbor. And again, what's interesting about Pearl Harbor is it happened December 7th. 127. In New York, the three buildings that fell that day were buildings 1, 2, and 7. And remember, Pearl Harbor got us into World War II. And the end of World War II was with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the aftermath of that was referred to as Ground Zero. Before 9/11, the only definition for Ground Zero was the point above or below ground where an atomic or nuclear bomb detonates. That's what the definition of Ground Zero was. And remember, New York, where the World Trade Centers fell, was in Manhattan, and the original secret plan to develop those weapons was called the Manhattan Project. So you got the World Trade Centers going down in Manhattan, and then terminology that came out of that, from the testing, from the use of them on Japan, was Ground Zero. And then on 9/11, they called the site Ground Zero in Manhattan. And what was the force that turned those massive structures to dust? Because again, we've all seen the photos of what it looked like when the buildings fell. They fell into their footprint. There was some of the steel frames sticking up at the very bottom. And you had pretty much nothing left. And imagine how much just like furniture and furniture. Just imagine how much furniture would be inside those buildings. Just everything is just gone, right? It's just all turned to dust, little dust pile, no longer 110 stories. I didn't go to New York and see it with my own eyes. From television, it looked like the remaining steel that was up at first might have been 10, 15 stories high. But just everything else is gone. What force would cause that? That is a question, but that question's not as important as who's behind all this. And that's very easy to see. And again, it's the Jesuit order, and we'll talk about more evidence of why that is. And in case you're new here, I have 2 books on this subject. The latest book is Number Games, 9/11 to Coronavirus, explains why from September 11th, 2001 to March 11th, 2020 was exactly 222 months on the nose. In Gematria, Order Out of Chaos is 222, a Jesuit motto. Wuhan Coronavirus is 222, and adding to that list is World Economic Forum 222, the Jesuit-run organization that simulated the coronavirus pandemic 1 month before the outbreak, and then hosted Donald Trump at their headquarters in Switzerland on January 21st, 2020, the 222nd day of Donald Trump's age, so that he could talk about why world trade would never be the same again after his trade deal with China on the day coronavirus was being confirmed in the U.S., the exact same day. There's even a whole lot more to it. But again, you guys, we are living out planned numerical rituals. And it's so obvious. A national emergency on 911. So there's a lot more that could be said about those days. But again, just if you're trying to wake people up to this knowledge, the Manhattan ground zero information is mind-blowing to most people because they haven't really thought about those things before. And then you can point out how building 1, 2, and 7 fell, like Pearl Harbor was December 7th. You can also point out how in Gematria, ground zero equals 127. That happens to be a number that mathematically connects back to 11, the master number in numerology. That's because 127 is the 31st prime and 31 is the 11th prime. There's a lot more that can be said about 127. It's a special number to the gang. Connects the Masonic headquarters in D.C. to the Jesuit establishment of the Bavarian Illuminati just before the American Revolution. But again, just all these little examples. All the 11s on 9/11, the 127 thing, Flight 77, how 33 years before 2001, all those things happened in 1968. I mean, almost every American doesn't know about any of those things. 20 years of 9/11 coverage, but no real information, Just nonstop propaganda, nonstop misdirection, nonstop lies. 20 years of lies, you guys. That's what today marks. 20 years of lies and injustice and way too much apathy to the truth. And that's exactly why we are where we are as a society right now, marching along to more lies, bending over for more lies, giving up more rights and liberties for more lies, and over another laughable excuse from the news media and government. Just like there was no Islamic terrorism threat ever to any of our lives. They've invented this new health threat that's always been there every year for the elderly and ill of health. Flu, cold, pneumonia kills people every year by the hundreds of thousands. Just never before did we lock down a nation over it and do a running count. That's all that's changed, and it's amazing that people don't see that. What do you mean? I had COVID. I felt really sick for a few days. I can't tell you how many people have said things that I'm like, you never got really sick for a few days before in your life? You never had the flu or anything? I mean, I couldn't even taste my soup. It's like, haven't you been sick before, man? I've been sick and not been able to taste my soup. Never asked anybody to lock down the country. But again, it really is the same shit, you guys. And, just, you look at this photo. Again, man, were there even really planes on 9/11? I can't believe I got this troll harassing me about that lately. Zach never says there's no planes. Like, shut the fuck up, troll. I've said the same thing for 8 straight years. I've always said were planes even involved. Before I knew Gematria, I wondered if planes were involved. They just melt into the building. Go back and look at the footage. I mean, it doesn't make sense the way they go in the building. It's like they melt in like a computer glitch. It's like, what in the world? And then this massive explosion comes out. It's like, wait a minute. What kind of plane is that? Isn't that what missiles do? Missiles hit a target and everything blows up. That's what a missile does. If a plane crushed into a building, I don't feel like it should just melt through. Well, what kind of wings are lightweight, you guys? What kind of wing would just tear right through steel and concrete? I feel like in reality, if you flew a plane into the World Trade Centers, the wing part is going to like disintegrate on impact, not just tear perfect lines through the building. No way. No way. That is lightweight material. So, yeah, just so many lies on 9/11. It's hard to know where they end, but what's not hard to know is who's behind all this. Now, CNN this morning's in just running with headlines that just say 20 years as they update the photos and the stories as 20 years. Remember how significant 20 is. I've been teaching about the significance of 20, time, the English language, and the cross for many years. And again, a letter T, a lowercase t looks like a cross. T is like a cross, right? It's the 20th letter. If you're new here, Gematria, it's a very simple practice. I found it looking for the truth about 9/11 and other lies in the media. And Manly P. Hawley teaches you two ciphers, the alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with the rules numerology. And the alphabetic order with the rules numerology, he says, is the most important cipher. The word time is 20, right? And the cross historically represents time. Cross is 20 as well. The cross represents the four seasons to the pagans. Seasons 20. You know, you see the cross, you think about Jesus' death on the cross. Death is 20. And here we are, you know, this big 20-year anniversary, remembering the lives lost. And mainstream media is doing their best to now carry on that spirit of demonizing a certain group as terrorists and, you know, deflecting that now towards the people who won't get the vaccine and the people who think that they had their election stolen in 2020 and the people who want Biden removed from office. Again, for the people who think the election was stolen in 2020, it was not. It was scripted for Biden, like I told you it would be all year. Just like how I told you the election would be scripted for Trump before that happened. All these elections are scripted. These are all Jesuit pawns and puppets. Biden's from Jesuit Scranton in Pennsylvania. That's where he was today in Shanksville, where 20 years ago they speculated the plane was flying so fast it's why they couldn't find any remaining parts. Again, that's why I've always said, were there even any planes on 9/11? They found no plane parts in Pennsylvania, but they said that a plane crashed there. Flight 93 that they made a movie about. Reminding you of the 93 World Trade Center bombing. And if you're new here, we've done a lot of work on 93 recently in Afghanistan. Some of it's been censored by YouTube, but check out what's there. Important numbers to know. But coming back to 20 years, 20 is a big time number, a big anniversary. And notice how on this anniversary you have Bush getting up talking about the new terrorism threat as domestic terrorists. And those are people like yours truly, you know. It was, what was it, a year or two ago that the FBI document came out at Arizona, how they see online extremists as domestic terrorists, and then their definition of online extremists were people who question things like Sandy Hook and 9/11. So, remember, Sandy Hook equals 112 with the alphabetic order. That's why all the news headlines had to report to you that Adam Lanza, the shooter, weighed 112 pounds. Another Jesuit operation. All day they show you footage of 3 men in fatigues running out the back of the school, and then by the end of the day it's a skinny Photoshop kid who has his brother's ID on him. Anyway, all these stories, you guys, they all have one thing in common. They all mock us. They all treat us like we're idiots, like we have no critical thinking skills, like we'll just believe anything as long as it comes from the authority, which is the government and the news. And sadly, that's how almost everyone's trained thanks to the 13 years of slave school. But Bush, coming out, identifying the new terrorist, 20 years, because we're moving through the 21st century game. Remember, his administration was a think tank prior to taking the Oval Office called the Project for a New American Century, and they called for a new Pearl Harbor to start the wars in the Middle East that his dad didn't finish. So, again, and that stuff's been out there on the public record. I think that stuff's even been shared on, like, CBS and the nightly news. Sometimes you watch the mainstream media, they will put out information that's true that if you're thinking, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they just reported that. But they know they're reporting to their brain dead audience, so they're not going to register anything. Anyhow, look at this guy. I want to remind you why they get him out here to talk about terrorism. And you see how NBC identified America I Know? Anytime the media emphasizes a set of words, there's gematria behind it. You see how America I Know equals Skull and Bones, which is the name of the secret society him and his father were a part of? Notice how America I Know equals 2:02 when you run the alphabetic order in reverse. The 202nd minute of the day is 3:22 in the morning. Skull and Bones identifies by 3:22. And then with regards to the 76, it should remind you of this nation's history. It should also remind you of George W. Bush's birthday, July 6th, 7-6. And he was born in New Haven, Connecticut, where Skull and Bones is, where his dad went and where his grandfather went, Prescott Bush. But notice from his birthday to September 11th is 68 days, right? And this is Mr. Terra, the man who said this word all the time. Every time he talked, he had to say this word at least 10 times. Terra, Terra, Terra. And just notice, from his birthday to September 11th, 68 days, Terror 68. In 1968, he graduated from Yale Skull and Bones. World Trade Center construction began in 68. 911 made the national emergency dialing code in 68. You know what? I'm going to teach you something about Gematria that I don't normally teach you. I've talked about it in my first book, if you've read it. But Skull and Bones equals 41 in the most pure cipher, like how his father was number 41. Of course, his father gave the speech about a new world order, September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day, a world freer of terror. He said terrorism, actually, his dad. But he was number 41. But this name, Skull and Bones, it has 2 S's in it, and it has 1 K. And with the reduction cipher, there's numerology rules that can be observed. K and V are the 11th and 22nd letters. They do not need to be reduced in terms of numerology. So K can be worth 11. If you do that, Skull and Bones becomes 50. But the other thing that can be done with this is it can equal 68. And that's because S is the only letter that has to be reduced 2 times. S is the 19th letter. The numerology of 19 is 1 plus 9 is 10. The numerology of 10 is 1 plus 0 is 1. You see? So if you observe the numerology in Skull and Bones, it's 68 instead of 41. And now you have his father, number 41, who died on November 30th. Remember, we said he wouldn't live past November of 2018 and why he died age 94. Talked about all this before it happened. A lot of people know that because they went out and bought my book afterwards. My book sold... The majority of my ebook sales happened in the days after Bush died. I sold more books in those days than I did in a year. But... And it's too bad because YouTube got rid of the video after that, so it didn't reach any more people. And that's the thing about this knowledge. The reason this knowledge isn't reaching people is because it continues to be suppressed, deleted, censored, algorithmed up. I realize, because I've been down on myself, but I'm like, you know what? My research would have done what I expected if there wasn't so many forces working against me. And again, his dad's 41, dies on 11/30, 11 plus 30, 41. Remember, Paul Walker died on that day. You got George Herbert Walker Bush. You got George Walker Bush. You got Paul Walker, who one of his first movies was The Skulls, which came out just before 9/11 about Skull and Bones. But then you have Bush himself, who had graduated in 68. And again, from his birthday to 9/11 each year is 68 days. Now, Skull and Bones, if you're not familiar with them, they get their symbolism from an ossuary. And an ossuary is how the Knights Templar buried their dead in the time of the Crusades. The word Templar equals 85. September 11th, when you write out his words, also equals 85 when you run it in reverse. And we invaded Afghanistan on the day leaving 85 days left in the year. Now, the Templars are the old military order of the Catholic Church. That's why the Jesuits, the new military order of the Catholic Church since the 16th century, right in the middle is the Templar cross. So the Templars and the Jesuits are very much connected. And with regards to ossuary, remember George Herbert Walker Bush's name equals ossuary, but ossuary in Jewish Gematria equals 9/11. Isn't that interesting? There's so many interesting things about Jewish Gematria and 9/11. In my first book, Letters and Numbers, I have the Jewish Gematria list for 9/11. There's so many things that pertain to 9/11 that have Jewish Gematria. Here, and another way to do this, if you don't want to get the book, if you go to Derek's calculator and you just pull up the Jewish cipher and you type in 9/11 and you click match, you'll get a list. So Tisha B'Av equals 9/11. What is Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is to remember the destruction of the 2 temples, right? Biblical. Just like how Genesis 11:9 is where the story of the Tower of the Babel ends, a tower that divided the people of the world. Notice the next word on the list in Jewish Gematria, division. division. Today, the media is using language to make it seem like anti-vaxxers are a very small, dangerous element of the population. Divisive rhetoric. This is another big talking point today in the media. The minority anti-vaxxers, who Biden called out in his 9/9 speech. How about the fact that in Jewish Gematria, Al-Qaeda terrorist attack equals 9/11? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that exactly what they said happened? An Al-Qaeda terrorist attack? Vatican Hill, 9/11, you guys, where the Jesuits operate out of. Jihadists. Not everything on this list fits in. Global currency might eventually, because this is all part of a planned route that they're taking us to. Jihadists. They said the 9/11 attackers were jihadists. Look up the book, The Final Jihad, by the brother of the governor of Oklahoma at the time of the Oklahoma City building bombing. Remember, that was foreshadowing for 9/11. But the brother of the sitting governor at the time wrote a book called The Final Jihad. It's got skull and crossbones on the cover. And the book involves a plot of a character named Tom McVeigh, not to be confused with Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City building bomber. But there's a Tom McVeigh in the book, and there's even a bombing of the Oklahoma City building that's done by a man who loads a truck full of explosives and parks it outside the building. That's the exact story that supposedly happened in Oklahoma City. A moving truck packed with explosives blew half the building away. And also in the Oklahoma City building bombing, the official story says a police officer pulled that moving truck over before it happened and let him go with a warning. All part of the drama. In the book, The Final Jihad, the same thing happens. I checked out this book years ago and read it. I couldn't believe it. I read about all this online and I thought it was bullshit, so I had to look into it myself. I said, oh my God. It used to be in the Seattle Public Library when I lived in Seattle. Had to look it up, and it's all facts. And, by the way, with regards to Seattle, you guys, the most pure cipher, Seattle, Washington is 68. And again, the construction firm for the World Trade Centers is from Seattle, Washington. None of this is by accident. Coronavirus was coined in 1968. Remember, the first case confirmed in Seattle, the second case in Chicago, but then it blew up in New York, the Empire State, right? Again, there's a reason for these things. It's symbolism, coast to coast. By the way, guys, I had to chime in that Knights Templar equals 560 in Jewish Gematria. Of course, those first two digits, 5 and 6, big numbers on 9/11. They said the three planes that hit targets, 11, 77, and 175, added up, it equals 263, the 56th prime. And as we know, that's the really big number with the Jesuits and their ritual. Society of Jesus, 56, coronavirus, 56, COVID vaccine, 56, Anthony Fauci, 56. Anthony Fauci's been the driving force of HIV and coronavirus, and all of this goes back to 1968, the same year 9/11 happened, you guys. Again, it's because major plans went into motion, major agents were put in place in that year, the same year the Club of Rome was established, because these people are operating by a code, and it had to go down that year, 33 years before 9/11, false flag 33, 52 years before the pandemic. And remember, technology's the big 52 code, and that's what's really a big part of the driving agenda right now is technology, because you got the brand new 5G towers that allowed all this new domestic surveillance and tracking of phones to the inch, and all this new contact tracing because of COVID, and the further building of a surveillance state. The stories worldwide, like how in Russia right away at the beginning of the pandemic, they put up the cameras that could recognize, they said, the vast majority of their citizens' faces. And again, the same stuff is going to be unleashing across the world. What happened in Russia a year and a half ago. I mean, cities like, those kind of cameras are here in the U.S. too. I mean, again, you guys, this is, I forgot to mention, in 1968, that's the year 2001, A Space Odyssey, the film came out, a movie about technology overtaking man. But again, you guys, we are living out agendas, and I understood that very clearly on 9/11 without understanding gematria or so much about the numbers, but it was just so obvious to me that this was an agenda, And I just want to point out the Gematria George Walker Bush, since they're bringing him out again today on the 20-year anniversary. You know what? Before we even go to his name, let's not forget where he was the day of 9/11. He was in Florida, right? And Florida has Gematria 43. He was the 43rd president. The election came down to Florida, where his brother Jeb Bush was the 43rd governor of Florida at the time. His father was the 41st president, the 43rd vice president, and also the 11th director of the CIA. Remember, Yale, with just the most simple cipher. Yale is 43, Yale is where Skull and Bones is. So he's down in 43 land in Florida after the rigged election. And that's why the people that are protesting elections and saying elections are rigged in 2020, I mean, these people need to pull their head out of their ass. They've been rigged your whole lifetimes. Wake the fuck up, you guys. Going along with this shit is pathetic. All of you who fell for QAnon are pathetic. QAnon equals 201 by the way, like the Jesuit order. Huge Jesuit psyop. But it's just, you guys, you got to stop being fucking pathetic. Politics is completely sold out. QAnon's whole thing about, Trump's here to save us and trust the plan. I mean, you got to be so fucking asleep to fall for any of this. Go back and watch my video from February 2016 for why Bush was going to win that election before he was even the Republican nominee. All part of the divide and conquer scheme. Another Jesuit pawn and puppet in the game. But with regards to this all being Jesuit, you guys, George Walker Bush. You see the name Gematria? Let's start with 177. Let's start right there with 177. Remember, if you write out the Jesuit order, it's 177. If you run the alphabetic order in reverse, New World Order is 177. And remember, his father gave the speech about a new world order, a world freer of terrorism, September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day, right? Special word number there, 177. Propaganda, 177. Also 93. Think about all the stuff with 93 in the World Trade Centers, from the 93 bombing to Flight 93, where the story doesn't make any sense. You see how George Walker Bush is 78 and 84 as well? Look at Jesuit. 78, 84. Remember, the Jesuit order also 84. The Catholic Church 84. United States of America 84. Very special number. Anthony Fauci, the head of NIH since 84. Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, 84 years old at the time of this anniversary. Has 84 birth numerology. The Superior General, the leader of the Jesuits, Adolfo Nicolas, died last year at age 84 in a huge ritual by the numbers. So, George Walker Bush, Skull and Bones member. Skull and Bones gets their symbolism from the Knights Templar. The Jesuits are essentially the continuation of the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar, after the Crusades, brought back all this knowledge of letters and numbers and Kabbalah and Hermeticism and alchemy and Kundalini. This secret knowledge that dates back, a lot of it to Babylon and Sumer. This knowledge became the property of the Catholic Church, right? By the way, for the guy who called into my show and said, watch that movie on the Catholic Church on this guy's channel, it's kind of lame that guy didn't create that video. That video's been out for a while. I watched it. I mean, it's a great video, but the guy who put that on his channel with nearly 1 million subscribers and, through the whole video, it says donate to my Patreon. It's like, dude, he took somebody else's work and did a donate to my Patreon it. But he's not the maker of that video. Sorry, I just had to go off tangent there if that person's listening. But yeah, it is a good video. It's just that somebody took somebody else's work, put it on their channel. Anyway, and then tries to make money on it. That's so wrong to me, to take somebody else's work and then say donate to my Patreon on it. I mean, come on. Should do a donate to their Patreon. They did the work. Anyway. Bush to come out and talk about the new terrorist target. This isn't exactly news, though. We've been talking about this for a while. I've been saying, see how the dial is changing. The terrorist is becoming more like the person right here who stands up to the tyrants. The anti-tyrant is now the terrorist. And again, that's what I've been saying the whole time. People are listening to the language of the criminals that run this nation and taking their narrative, their point of view, their storyline. And it's pathetic because these people are such obvious liars. This is such an obvious fraud. And Yeah, again, for those of us who are not part of these sleeping masses, again, we really need to figure out how to organize better. I've been trying to do my part, bring people together with this community, host a website that's free of censorship where people can share information, link up, network, be anonymous as they want or share as much information as they want, find out who's in their community. And again, I know that a lot of you have not done that because you're caught up in the matrix, right? You got bills to pay, you got kids to feed, that's what it is, right? That's why this tyranny goes on, because people aren't willing to take any kind of risk to do more in terms of activism and helping wake up the world. And again, we're all getting taken down this very dangerous path because of that. No one's willing to step off the treadmill of life. But now the treadmill is getting faster and faster and more dangerous. And now look, how many people that have followed my work over the years have gone out and get the vaccine even though they don't believe in it? I'm sure there's quite a few people. I'm sure there's quite a few people that had to because, they got a job and they got mouths to feed. And again, you guys, this is what I've been warning about for a long time. That if we don't do our part, like understand the only reason I'm here is because I took a bunch of risks. I quit jobs, had to do all sorts of stuff to be here doing this, to make my life about this rather than being on the slave grind. And the reason I took those risks is because I knew humanity needed, people to do their part to bring about the end of this tyranny. And there's just not enough people in the world who've done that yet, and that's why these people continue to win and get their way, and their agendas are still ongoing. It doesn't have to be this way in the next 20 years. If humanity can find its courage, I don't want to imagine what it's going to look like in 20 more years. There might be a lot less people here, I'll tell you that much. Again, that's the other thing etched down by these psychopaths. 322, March 22nd, 1980. That's Skull and Bones' number. The 10 rules for the new world. The first one, limit the Earth's population to 500 million. I don't know when the timeline is for that, but 13 out of 14 people living today got to go to hit that number. And again, Skull and Bones, just think about it. Symbol of death. Symbol of death. Okay. So yeah, George Walker Bush, you got all the numbers. Prince of Darkness is 255. Phrase associated with evil, which he absolutely is. And also in the headlines today, CNN also had this up on their page for a bit. The vast minority who are vaccine resistant are circulating COVID. Well, I guess we should just be circulating it among a vast minority then. I don't know why we're such a big focus, because all these people that rushed out and got their Pfizer jab, they should all be safe and protected and nothing to worry about. I don't know how anyone could make a logical argument otherwise. And I'm happy being in that vast minority. I've been totally healthy the whole time, haven't complied with any rules. Been living my life, haven't been wearing a mask, no shots, been as healthy as ever, haven't been sick one time during the pandemic, and that's because I've always taken care of myself, always eaten well, always gotten enough sleep, and never really worried that much about illness. I made food my medicine back when I was a teenager. I noticed that my nation was lying to me about the food pyramid back when I was a teenager, Only sheep are saying things like, well, now the FDA approved it, so it must be okay. If you're saying things like that, you need to pull your fucking head out of your sorry ass. And sorry, that's the only way to say it. The FDA has been a known fraud for a long time. Its own executive wrote a book about it. Again, this book's 20 years old, you guys. 20 years old. FDA's been a known corrupt entity for a long time. Listen to people like Ralph Nader, what he tells you about all these government agencies that are here to protect you. He's been saying it for over 20 years. They're all foxes guarding the henhouse. And he holds himself responsible. He said, listen, I advocated and helped, bring about a lot of these things, and now that I see they've all been turned into the enemies of the people. He was saying this in the early 2000s. So an older man who's still living, who also made food his medicine. He's nearly 100 years old, Ralph Nader. But for 20 years, he's been accounting for his regrets. How he helped build up government to keep people safe, and he realized that wasn't the solution. Ralph Nader's the answer to all liberals. Government's not the solution. They lie to you every day. They steal your money. They take your money and give it to other people, including their cronies. That's what government is, power and control. Ralph Nader learned that as an old man. As a young man, he helped make government bigger. He thought he was helping. He had the right intentions. It's just he realized that the people that take the positions for the things he helped create, they weren't the same kind of people as him inside. He cared about people's safety and health. These people that take these positions, they just care about getting the latest pay under the table and being in power and having a nice cushy job with government benefits. You got to be a sheep to not know these things. To be voting in 2020, pathetic. 2021, we're not even in 2020 anymore. All of this stuff, you guys, it's so bought and paid for. It's such a corrupt game. It all needs to be burned to the ground, man. Period. But the vast minority who are vaccine resistant are circulating COVID. Okay, does it even really make sense? They say cases are 3 times worse this year than they were last year. How's that possible? If the majority of the population's vaccinated and they're all safe from COVID, then how are there 3 times more cases? Their reporting doesn't add up. It's all bullshit. It's all nonsense. Here's the point I want to make, though. I want to remind people. Remember, they said the first 2 people to get vaccinated in the world were Maggie Keenan and William Shakespeare, of all people, right? William Shakespeare. And the first vaccine for Maggie and William were in Coventry. And I did a video on this day. I said, look at this, you guys. I said, look at the definition of Coventry. Exclusion, being ostracized. I said they're telling you what's going to happen if you don't get the vaccine. Not to mention, before all this happened, I predicted everything dead on. I said they won't make vaccines mandatory. You'll just see all the entertainment venues, employers, all these things will require the vaccine, so people will end up getting it that way. If you want to get health insurance, they might make it so that you have to have a vaccine. That's exactly what they've done. All this stuff is so predictable, and the reason I said it'd be that way is because then it's easier for them to hide the agenda. People don't understand that these major employers, these international companies, they're all part of this Jesuit cabal. The Jesuits are controlling government and private enterprise worldwide, and that's why they got fascism going worldwide. Remember, fascism came out of Italy, just like the Catholic Church, like the Jesuits. Mussolini coined the term fascism, the same man who made the Vatican an independent city-state, which made them invincible from their corruption being stopped by any outside government, because now they're their own nation. Again, you guys, you got to look at the game that they did to us from the beginning. Freedom of religion. That's the only freedom that should not exist. I'm totally for freedom. The only freedom that should not exist in this world is freedom of religion, because religion is a plague. We need freedom from religion, not freedom of religion. We need freedom from religion. We need a land where religion's not allowed. It's okay to be spiritual. It's okay to have your beliefs. It's just we don't want any buildings. We don't want any groups getting together, celebrating their cult. Because again, without religion, none of this shit happens. And it is religion behind all of this. This is the work of the Catholic Church. Remember, in our history books, they tell us that the Pilgrims were trying to escape the tyranny of the Catholic Church in Europe. They're trying to get away from that. Trying to get away from the usury by the Jewish-owned banks. Remember, the Jesuits are Jewish in Catholic. You know what Jewish is? It's a new pronunciation with the silent J. But the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther. Again, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on the 95th day of 1968. He assumed the name Martin Luther after the Protestant Reformation leader who wrote the 95 Theses, which brought about the Catholic Jesuits, who were created to counter the 95 Theses and recognized by Rome on the day leaving 95 days left in the year. But Martin Luther, he put out 2 texts, the 95 Theses against the Catholic Church and the Jews and their lies. And with that second part, and understand, I'm not going after all Catholics and I'm not going after all Jews. But just like Martin Luther identified, there's dangerous elements within this religion that are bent on controlling people and, having the most sinister of means to do it. And don't forget on 9/11, it was Ehud Barak, the leader of Israel at the time, who was the first person to go on TV and say that the United States needs to invade Afghanistan and declare a war on terrorism. And of course, Israel is the Catholic, Jesuit-controlled nation from the beginning. But again, the Jesuits are Catholic and Jewish from the beginning as well. And, with regards to this dangerous, these dangerous elements within this ooish group, we got Mr. Ooh himself, this ugly, sorry-ass walking pile of bones, Howard Stern, a purveyor of poison, a pervert, a man who's become a multimillionaire off exploiting young women, appealing to a nation of... I'll admit, Howard Stern's had some funny things in his time, but I mean, most of his content is truly filth and trash, and he really is appealing to the lowest of the lowest. But look at this fucking guy. This past week, the week of 9/11, and don't forget what a mouthpiece he was after 9/11, cheering on the invasion of the Middle East and talking big about how these people need to pay. The only people that need to pay are people like him, because I bet you at the end of the day, Howard Stern really knows what happened on 9/11. I bet you he doesn't believe the official story, which is nothing but a pile of bullshit. He's not retarded. The Jewish people have written plenty of books about how many IQ points they have and how much smarter they are than everybody else. I don't believe a word of what Howard Stern said this week. I just think he's playing his part in the division and leading the brain-dead masses astray, which is what he's done for years with his radio program. But this fucking guy said just the stupidest shit this week. And again, he's getting praised for, again, coming out against freedom. And realize, he said this days before Biden's speech, but it got all the attention on September 9th, which I told you September 9th was going to be full of big headlines because it's the United States naming anniversary. It was named that on September 9th, 1776. That's because the United States of America equals 99. Named on 9/9. But Biden, in his speech on that day, talked about how this isn't about freedom in regards to the pandemic. He said the pandemic's not about freedom. It's you guys, all it's about, they did this to us after 9/11. It's not about freedom. It's about being kept safe by your government because your government cares so much about your safety and health. I mean, it's just laughable. It's laughable that anyone can be fooled by any of this. Your government cares about health, the same government that subsidizes junk food and makes sure your supermarkets are stocked with all this cheap processed shit full of corn and sugar, because those are the most subsidized things by our government. I mean, come on. They want a nation of sick addicts that they can exploit at the back of the grocery store off the pharmaceutical pills that pay the biggest profit. And again, look at Washington, D.C. It's got way more lobbyists for the pharmaceutical industry than it does politicians. And now it has politicians that are literally making the law of the land what the pharmacy giants want. Isn't it funny how government in the Latin breaks down to mind control, govern the mind? And you think about it, drugs, pharmaceutical, running the government, how drugs can influence the mind. It's like, it was probably always meant to be this way. But yeah, Howard Stern comes out and does the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing with fuck your freedom. And let me read this. Howard Stern takes no pity on his peers. The iconic shock jock has typically strong opinions about the swelling list of outspoken anti-vaxxer media personalities, including several U.S. radio hosts who've died of COVID-19 after waging high-profile campaigns about their freedom being impinged upon. When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Stern ranted in Tuesday's episode of The Howard Stern Show. Fuck them. Fuck their freedom. I want my freedom to live. I want to get out of the house already. I want to go next door and play chess. I want to go take some pictures. I mean, seriously, you fucking pussy. Then go out of your fucking house and take some pictures and go play some chess, you fucking pussy. You're going to blame other people because you're scared to go out of your house and you're already vaccinated, you fucking pussy? God, what a fucking fraud, man. What a fucking fraud. You know what? I haven't been vaccinated. I've been out of the house the whole fucking time. I haven't followed any rules. I haven't worn a mask. You guys have seen the video that I uploaded a year ago in the post office. Big fat bitch. Looked like a whale that needed to be made into soap. started screaming at me, put a mask on. And Leroy came out and sent that fat bitch packing out the door. You know? That's what this whole nation would look like if more people stood up to the bullshit and didn't bow down. I go in a store and they start telling me put a mask on. I say, you don't have any authority to make me put a mask on? I said, you want to lose a customer? And they all shut the fuck up. I've walked out of every store this year making the purchase that I want to without a mask. I did lose my membership at Costco. Costco didn't like that I live streamed the way to stand up to these frauds. So the next, 3 days later, they wrote me a letter and let me know that my membership had been revoked. That's fine. I didn't want to support Costco anyway. Fuck Costco. Fascist enterprise. But, I mean, this shit's a joke. You got the vaccine, and you're blaming people that aren't vaccinated, the small, insignificant minority, that you can't go outside and take a picture or play chess. What a fucking pussy, man. You want to know why your types have been kicked out of 1,000 fucking countries? Take a look in the mirror, sorry-ass motherfucker. And again, I'm not against all you-know-whos, but again, I will say that when I first started sharing this work, the people who went the hardest against me and my community were the you-know-whos that I knew. You know, they really didn't like it. Part of me looks back and wonders if they knew something. Anyway, the 67-year-old king of all media continued to mock the deceased right-wing radio host, taking particular pleasure in pointing out how many of the dead, at first proudly defiant, changed their tunes on their deathbeds. Now remember, some of these stories are complete bullshit. That Nashville guy, Phil Valentine, that's a complete bullshit story. That guy's probably on a beach right now. It's real funny when these radio guys are the best. They're like, 4 of them died. 4 of them were like ranting on the air. They will not get vaccinated, Stern said amid laughter during Tuesday's show. They were on fire, these guys. It was like the day after day. They were all dying, and then their dying words are, I wish I had been more into the vaccine. I wish I had taken it. You know what? I feel like showing up in this guy's fucking studio and saying, you know what, sorry-ass motherfucker? I'm a Lutheran. That's how I was raised. The Lutherans went against your kind and the Catholics because they knew they were sorry-ass motherfuckers. And guess what? You're in the land of the religiously free. Now listen to this click, click, boom. You know, I mean, that's what needs to happen right now, you guys. It needs to be Roddy Piper times 20 for the 20-year anniversary. Enough of the sorry-ass motherfuckers. This piece of shit's been a millionaire, you know, for how many decades exploiting people? Lying about 9/11, now lying about the vaccine. What a fucking loser, man. Who still listens to this fucking pussy? You can't go outside and take a picture and play some chess, faggot? You're a fucking pussy. Bringing back words from the 90s. That's what's wrong, too. Just way too much censorship, way too much schmoozing with all the homosexual agenda. You see who's running this nation. Remember, it's the Catholics who are into the ass plundering. Longtime co-host Robin Quivers, here's a sellout, 69 chimed in, you know, I have trouble drumming up compassion, and I think that's a terrible thing to not be able to drum up compassion for people that are stupid, that they wind up dying. Conservative host Mark Bernier, who dubbed himself Mr. Anti-Vax on his weekday WNDB radio show from Daytona Beach before dying of COVID-19, took a special drubbing from Stern. Where do I have that clip of that Mark Bernier, the guy who died? He said in his chuckling radio cohorts, poked fun at the late Bernier's infamous nickname. Yeah, he's dead. He's no longer walks. You know what? This is a conversation that should be happening about this sorry-ass motherfucker right now. It should have been happening a long time. I don't even care about these conservative radio hosts. If they really are dead, it's not because of COVID. Might be because they were public personalities speaking out and they needed to be made an example of by this killer network of Jesuits. Don't forget Society of Jesus equals 187 like arsenic poisoning. And again, that's what the Jesuits are known for, killing people with arsenic with poisoning. And the thing about dying from poisoning is, historically, it looks like you died from a bad case of the flu. So if you got killed from arsenic, you might look like you died from the flu. And as we know, coronavirus was initially coined as the seasonal flu, you know? And then this bullshit at the end. I'll tell you what, as far as I remember, when I went to school, you had to get a measles vaccine, you had to get a mumps vaccine, and it was a ton of them, Stern said. No, it wasn't a ton of them, cocksucker. He's from my mom's generation. My mom's 2 years older than him. My mom just turned 69 on September 8th. They didn't have to get a ton of vaccines, and measles wasn't a required vaccine back then, so he's lying. My mom had measles as a child, as most children did back then, and it wasn't a big deal. They're starting to realize now that shingles is something people get from getting measles vaccines. You end up getting shingles later in life. That's like what we're doing. We're like trying to cure like the way we are with nature. Like man's trying to come in and say, here, I'll make it better. But then it just creates a new problem. You know? That's the thing that doesn't seem to be learned. How we instigate new problems. That they say 9/11 was because of Al-Qaeda, and they say Al-Qaeda was paid for by the CIA because the CIA was trying to create military influence with the Soviet Union and communism, but then it gave rise to this new monster that ended up blowing up the World Trade Centers. You know, then we have these staged theatrics in Afghanistan on the Jesuit birthday, August 15th, and then how do we go in and solve the problem? We go in and bomb them some more? How's that make any sense? It's not meant to make any sense. It's because these people are just doing what they need to do to keep the world instigated, fighting amongst themselves, driven by the same narratives, falling into the same traps. And if they're not doing that, they're listening to Howard Stern stroking themselves. You know, this guy that helped make a nation of perverts and losers. See, Martin Luther wasn't wrong. Again, I'm not against all Catholics and Jews, but the problem with both of these religions is they both think they're better than everybody else. You know, the Talmud says that a non-Jew is an animal. That's what's written in the Talmud. A non-Jew is an animal because it's not intelligent enough to be considered human. And the Jews are always bragging about their IQ. You know, what's their average? They have average 15 or 20 more IQ points, something like that. Maybe it's more. Maybe one of them's getting offended. It's 30. Well, if that's the case, Howard Stern sure is dragging the average down. The fuck kind of argument is this? I might have to fly out to New York and handle some business. And honestly, you guys, that's not just, you know what? That's not just talk. I would do it, you guys. I'm not going to go out on a solo mission. But that's what time it is, man. It's time to fucking fight back. We are ruled over by killers and liars and tyrants. I'm sick of explaining the same shit. It's time for the revolution. You know? This fucking guy, man. Fuck your freedom. Man, fuck you. And then just the Biden 6-step plan on 9/9. Come on, man. What happens when you flip nines upside down? They simulated this whole shit with Cladex on May 15th, 2018, 666 days before the pandemic. This fucker who's killed his wife, daughter, and son, mom and dad, all in perfect rituals. All that point right back to the Jesuits where he came from. And Trump's no better. Last year on the Jesuit birthday, his brother died. Again, you guys got to stop getting caught up in all this political bullshit. 20 years ago, the Republicans were telling you why you needed to give up your rights and liberties to fight terrorism. 20 years later, the Democrats are telling you why you got to give up your rights and liberties to fight germs. Two heads of the same monster. By the way, his mandate for federal employees, 293 days after his birthday, coronavirus pandemic 293, just shit we already know. On the same day of the speech, you got Brady and Gronkowski connecting for 2 touchdowns. By the way, we helped a ton of people make a ton of money because we had Gronkowski to score 2 touchdowns in the game to pick up his 102nd of his career to start the 102nd season, right before 9/11, the anniversary of the 102-minute attack. But what was hilarious is that I didn't catch this before the game, but it was so perfect. Brady has thrown almost all the touchdowns to Gronkowski. Gronkowski now has 100 touchdowns from Brady, meaning 2 he's caught have been from someone other than Brady. But his first touchdown of the game from Brady, they announced during the game, was his 99th of his career on 9/9, and then the second was his 100th from Brady, 102nd of the career. And remember, they opened up the season against the Cowboys, 102. On the day leaving 113 days left in the year, Dallas 113. But remember, with the most simple cipher, New England is 99, right? New England 99. So on 9/9, the 2 guys that used to be New England Patriots, they connect for their 99th touchdown to start the game. By the way, that was Brady's 666th career touchdown. It was his second of the game. He came in with 664 to start the game. His second touchdown was the first to Gronkowski, which was the 666th of his career. His 99th to Gronkowski. Again, 9 is 6 upside down. But they both came over from New England. We've been talking about the New England 99 rituals with the Patriots a million times. The Patriots in the 99th NFL season won Super Bowl 53. Their away game that year was against the Chiefs for the AFC Championship. And I believe it's this cipher. Arrowhead Stadium is 99. Yeah, it is. Brady got his 99th career road win playing for the New England Patriots, the helmet with the white guy. over the native team in their building. Brady gets his 99th career road win to advance to the Super Bowl over the Native American team, you see? And then again, this nation, named on 9/9, right? This nation named on 9/9, the United States of America, 99. So then on 9/9, Brady and Gronkowski years later are hooking up for their 99th career touchdown. And understand, by the way, in the most simple cipher, the alphabetic order, Patriot is 99. The Patriot Act, the Patriots, this matchup, this career accomplishment right before the 20-year anniversary, like I've been explaining the whole time. It's so obvious the NFL's fixed and rigged. They got it synced up with the politics, the news. It's not just the NFL, it's all the sports. But again, you learn the code, you see through the mockery like no other. And look at this shit, too. Just the way they have to code shit. Jill, what is it? This is the headline about Joe Biden remembering 9/11. Jill, what is it, equals 152, like Joe Biden equals 152, who's from Jesuit Scranton, Pennsylvania 152. And remember, this year President's Day fell on February 15th, 15/2, like 152, which was the 46th day of the year in the election of the year, number 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday, when Catholic equals 46. But then Biden this morning, he's in Shanksville. Didn't it crash in Stony Creek Township? It's like, why are they always in Shanksville? Maybe the reason why is because Shanksville, PA equals the same thing as Skull and Bones. And don't forget when I documented Joe Biden getting his vaccine at 3:22. You guys remember that? Joe Biden getting his vaccine at 3:22 sharp. Skull and Bones. Owning your capital city. So, I know that video's out there. I did the funny voice for it. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there for now, True Seeker. Possibly get back on here tonight. I'll do another live stream tomorrow, if not tonight. And just see if anybody else has anything from 9/11 that they've learned from the knowledge, something I've never covered before, a new observation. But, you know what? I gotta cover one more, actually. I got to cover one more story. This was one of CNN's top stories, and I remember this so well because I was in Arizona, going to Arizona State University when 9/11 happened. I was in my second week of college when 9/11 happened. Still seems like it was yesterday. I had Miss Applebloom's math class. She was all freaked out. She had the latest paranoia that she was telling us all about, how we shouldn't be in class. I remember there was some story that she thought had broken about 7 more planes were hijacked, and it ended up not even being true. But this happened in Arizona 4 days after 9/11. It became a national news story. And I felt disgusted by it at the time because I just knew 9/11 was a lie. It's like they're blaming people who aren't responsible. They're making it seem like Islam did it. It's so obvious this is our own nation. This is the military empire. This is whatever really runs this nation. But look at the man who was supposedly killed 4 days after 9/11, who was a Sikh, who was confused as a Muslim. Sikhs look similar to Muslims, but they're not. They're closer to Christians. The man's name, though, look at his name, Gematria. 187, 79, 218, 83. Now I look back and go, God, is this even a real story, or was this just more, propaganda by the numbers? It seemed real at the time, though. I'll tell you what, by the time this happened, everyone was already driving around Arizona with a sticker on the back of their car with Osama bin Laden's face and a target over it, But this guy's name, 18779? Remember, Bush's birthday is the 187th day of the year. Society of Jesus got the 187 and 79, right? In that same cipher, Washington, D.C. is 187. The Jesuits are from Paris, France, 187. You got the Jesuit scumbag in D.C. right now, Anthony Fauci, 187. Look at Fauci's name in all 4 ciphers. The 4 ciphers are alphabetic order with the rules numerology, reverse alphabetic order with the rules numerology. Washington, D.C. is the exact same in every cipher as Fauci. But okay, you got 79, 187, Society of Jesus numbers. His name also equals 79 and 83. Murder equals 79 and 83, right? And the other thing in his name was 218. Holy Roman Empire is 218 and 187. 218, 187, right? The Jesuits serving the Holy Roman Empire. They're known for murder. So, I mean, I look at this, and some stuff can be organic, but I'm looking at this now and I'm going, man, this was probably another cooked up, propaganda story by the numbers then too. It seemed totally believable at the time, though. People in 9/11 or people in Arizona where I were. I mean, they were ready to shoot Muslims. So, Catholic Church leading them right into the new Crusades. How easy it is to garner the will of the people with a little propaganda. 13 years of slave school did a number on their brains. They don't know shit about physics. They don't know shit about common sense. They can't see that building exploding outwards the way it is and coming down the demolition, that there's all kinds of things just wrong with that on the surface. They're not asking any questions, but they're just marching right along. But remember this movie poster, Murder by Numbers. The E to the 3, the B to the 8, 3883, and the orange numbers right around it, the 79. Again, Murder's got the 3883. The song Murder by Numbers about killing being as simple as ABC 1, 2, 3 and being the sport of the elected. You got the Murder 3883 and you also got the 79. Murder 79. Remember the Agatha Christie novel, The ABC Murders, about killing by a letter and number code? The ABC Murders 79. The ABC Murders like Society of Jesus. Again, that's who's behind all this stuff, you guys. Amazon put out that series on 2/1, Jesuit 21. Sure, you had the Jesuit overthrow of Burma's military on 2/1. And now I understand why we started taking refugees from Burma the same year we started taking refugees from the Middle East, the nations that we destroyed. Now I have no doubt that the military ongoing conflict in Burma, it's the work of this same Jesuit cabal, Two big governments overthrown this year in clear Jesuit rituals. Jesuit 21 on 2/1 and then on the Jesuit birthday in Afghanistan. So, yeah. If you haven't seen this ABC Murders, that they made a series on the Amazon streaming service, John Malkovich, the lead actor, just more clues of what's going on in the world, you guys. So I'm going to leave it there for now, Truth Seeker. And, yeah. We'll be back soon. Till next time.